Howdy y'all, this is Ryan Swag here, and we are going to go over the Rainbow Cup Meta. This is following the article by Lorman96 on the Game Press team. So if you want some more information than what I'm giving you on the Rainbow Cup Meta, link in the description to that article so you can check it out and get even more learned up on the Rainbow Cup Meta. If you're wondering why I don't have a face cam, right now things aren't very conducive at my place for recording myself, so I know, it's sad. No Ryan Swag. Let's get into the meta here. So we got another lovely infographic made by Lorman96 yet again. And cool news for the future. It's summertime, so I am not in class, which means I do have some more time to focus on PvP, which means I might be able to get this kind of content out to you before the cups start, right? Yeah, it's already been a week, so this information might not be useful to some of you. But for those of you that still have yet to do your Rainbow Cup battles, well, hopefully this will help you out. Overall, the meta is pretty simple. You got water types, you got fire types, you got grass types. What beats what? You tell me, right? But then we also have bug type Pokemon thrown into the mix, which make for some pretty interesting matchups. And then we also have electric type Pokemon, which you don't really see a whole lot of the electric type Pokemon, but we do got Lanturn, right? Starting out, we got Quagsire up here. Quagsire is most notable for its rapid energy gains with the Mud Shot, and its variety of moves that it can be thrown at you. Overall, the for sure charge move you're going to want to have is Stone Edge, but then after that, you kind of got your own spice to work with. Sludge Bomb does help you out more against the Azumarill, just absolutely shutting it down, and could lay in the hurt on a pure grass type Pokemon, should you come across one. Then you've got the Earthquake, which just settles any questions in the mirror matchup. Just a powerful ground type attack, nuking tons of things all over the place. And then you have the third option, which is the Acid Spray, if you like to live a little dangerously and try to finesse your matchups. Overall, it's hard to say which move is the best overall for SwagTips. Personally, I'm partial to the Earthquake, just because it's just bam, settled, no wild finesse going on. I can see why Acid Spray would appeal to a lot of players because of its ability to, decrease the defense of their opponents after they complete their mission and destroy something with Stone Edge. The choice is up to you. And if you really are lost, you really don't like Earthquake, Acid Spray just seems a little bit too flaky for you, well, there's always Sludge Bomb waiting in the wings, waiting to destroy Azumarill. Moving on from SwagTips, we do have Azumarill, and Azumarill is just a frickin' mastermind, right? Every single cup that Azumarill's allowed to be in, it's there, at the top, finger in the air, being a PvP Great League boss. Yeah, so cool things working for the Azumarill is, of course, its bulk, its unique resistances. If you're not aware, Fairy type does resist bug type attacks, and its coverage. It's got Fairy type coverage to hit things for neutral damage, helping it out against the water types in those mirror matchups. And then you also have Ice Beam, which just goodbye grass types. And then if you do want to pack in that nuke damage, you can go with Hydro Pump as well, which will just absolutely obliterate a Quagsire that thinks it has it easy against you. Well, guess what, fool? I got Hydro Pump. Overall, the bread and butter moveset would be Bubble with the Ice Beam, with the Play Rough. But if you do want to live dangerously and go with the Hydro Pump, I would suggest cutting the Play Rough for that. Then standing right behind it, we have Blastoise. Blastoise, really cool because it's got the Hydro Cannon. But with the Water Gun, maybe coming a little bit too late. And then being a pure Water type, you do benefit from the Water type resistances, but then you don't have that additional resistance from your additional subtype going on there. So Blastoise, you have some big shoes to fill. I don't know if Blastoise is exactly a good Azumarill replacement, but if you definitely do not want to spend the Stardust on Azumarill, Blastoise could make for a solid alternative. And then finally, for the main Water type squad, we have Lanturn. And Lanturn is a Pokemon that needs no introduction, has been topping cups ever since it was born itself, much like Azumarill. Oh man, Water types are just so good in PvP. Yeah, so you've got Water Gun, you've got Thunderbolt. What more do you need to know? This cheeky guy up here thinks he's the anti-meta, unique, I can fight everybody kind of guy. Guess who you can't fight, Mantine? You can't fight Lanturn. Lanturn knows it. Then you've got Charizard. Charizard versus Lanturn. Lanturn laughs at Charizard. And then Fortress. Fortress thinks it's cool. It's got Earthquake, right? But I think that Earthquake's coming a little bit too slow for the Lanturn. Just completely wrecking this guy's existence. One thing you do have to be wary of with the Lanturn, though, is if you do switch it into your opponent, and they switch in a Grass-type Pokemon, Well, welcome to Farmville. Yeah, you are just completely and utterly destroyed in every way imaginable. So Lanturn does carry some risks, but it does carry some heavy benefits, and is definitely a Pokemon that you should consider including it on your team. Now, when you're thinking about these three water types, you're like, Ryan Swag, which one should I include on my team? And guess what? You got 6 slots. You can include 2 of them or even all 3 of them. And to be honest, you wouldn't be that far behind your opponents if you were to include all 3. They're just that good, that much coverage going on with that much matchup variety. One thing I will definitely stand here, though, is the Quagsire. Absolute must-have pick for this cup. Just shuts down Charizard, no questions asked, just great coverage, and it also has that mystery. What is the second charge move? Which will always keep your opponent on their toes until they know. So definitely include this guy if you haven't already. Then going on down, we have the Anti-Grass Town. Yeah, we got the Bug and Fire-type Pokemon. Guess what? They're on a team. And in this group, we also have our first privilege check. Yeah, Charizard. Blast Burn, freaking Charizard. If you don't have one under 1500 CP and you can't get one, you are going to be quite behind your opponents in this particular cup. Every tournament that has come out so far, who's at the top, finger in the air, but Charizard. Ninetales does work as a replacement, but not really. No, it doesn't have the flying type, so it doesn't have the double resist on the grass types, which means the grass types can reasonably threaten the Ninetales. And the Ninetales, outside of the Legacy Flamethrower, really doesn't have a good charge move, fire type wise, to back it up. It does have Psy Shock, which is pretty unique. It can hit the poison types and offers some pretty good neutral coverage. And then it also has the Solar Beam, which can bring the Doom to the grass types if you ever charge up to it. But overall, Ninetales definitely is not replacing Charizard anytime soon. If you are an unfortunate soul who does not have the Legacy Blast Burn Charizard and you cannot get your hands on it, I'd say perhaps your best option would either be to focus on the Mantine as a way to, get around not having the fire typing, focus on the bug types as well, or just go, full Sith here. Go for the Magcargo and just crush any Charizards that come your path with spite. The spite that you don't have one, right? Yeah, so Magcargo, pretty cool alternative pick. It's got Rock Throw. Big problem that it has, though, is that it trades its ability to do any sort of reasonable fire-type damage to just absolutely wreck Charizard, and I guess Ninetales by extension. But then the grass types kind of dominate you, more or less. Magcargo isn't a bad pick. It has some pretty solid neutral matchups overall. You're just doing Rock Throw. Who's stopping you from doing Rock Throw other than Quagsire, right? So Magcargo, not a terrible pick, and probably one of your best bets should you be lacking the Blast Burn Charizard. But if you do have the Blast Burn Charizard, yeah, don't really look back and don't really think about the other fire types. They're just a distraction. Then moving on down, we have the bugs. Starting out, we got the Forretress. And the Forretress, man, has been the hidden master of PvP ever since it came out. Well, ever since the Open Great League meta has developed more, Forretress has definitely fallen off the radar, but in the context of this particular cup, if your opponent isn't packing a Charizard for some reason, well, then there's no reason to not include Forretress. Another reason to include Forretress as well is the Confusion users. The Confusion users are pretty deadly for unprepared teams, as I will get into a bit later, and this guy just says no. Forretress shows up, and all 4 of these Confusion users, guess what? They be crying. This guy, not crying. So a very solid option. It's not a 100% for sure can always beat the grass-type Pokemon, but the grass types, aside from Meganium, really don't have a lot to do against this guy, so pretty solid in those matchups as well. And I can totally stand having a Forretress on your team. As far as the charge moves go, Earthquake is definitely a must-have, as it allows you to just obliterate water types that think they have it easy against you. Then you have your secondary charge move. Heavy Slam comes a little bit earlier and packs in the pain on the grass types a little bit harder. And then you have Rock Tomb, which just destroys Charizard. Shows up, gets Rock Tombed, he's doomed. And then Mantine also does not appreciate the Rock Tomb of Doom as well. So it is up to you. Then we've got Beedrill. And Beedrill's a tricky little guy, right? So he's a poison bug type Pokemon. He's got the poison jab. So Azumarill shows up, this guy shows up, Azumarill goes home crying. And then on top of that, you've got the poison bug typing. So you've got the double resist on for the grass types, putting them onto farm mode for you, aside from Earthquake Meganium, which is pretty nice. So plenty of reasons to include the Beedrill on your team. Big problems that Beedrill has, though, is SwagTips up here, a Pokemon that every team should have, and should always be using Stone Edge. Will show up and has Stone Edge, and that just wrecks you, right? Resists poison type damage, if I recall correctly. I always get Rock and Ground mixed up, so my apologies if I got this mixed up in the moment here. Then you got the fire types, which destroy you, and Fortress, which destroys you, and then Mantine, which also, for the most part, destroys you. So Beedrill has a hard time going here. I can't 100% advise you using it on your team, but I have heard of players using it with some success. So if you are a Beedrill master, the Beehive keeper yourself, well, then it might be something you might want to think about using. Then moving on over, we got the final piece of the triangle here, the Triforce of wisdom, right? We got the grass-type Pokemon. On top, we got Venusaur, Finger in the Air, and why is Venusaur on top of these guys? Because it has Sludge Bomb. A fast Sludge Bomb, sorry, Victory Bell, a fast Sludge Bomb, which allows it to take these guys out in the mirror. And then Sludge Bomb also packs a ton of pain onto Charizard, who thinks it's going to have an easy time. Charizard gets hit by a Sludge Bomb, guess who's having an easy time now? Venusaur. You thought it was an easy matchup? Psych. So, if Venusaur is so powerful and great and pure, why consider the other grass-type Pokemon? Well, for one, you might not have a sub 1500 CP Venusaur with Frenzy Plant. Yet again, another privilege check of the Silph Cup. If you are being held back in such a way, you definitely do have Meganium to think about. Big problem with Meganium is it doesn't have the poison type coverage. So some Pokemon, such as Charizard, kind of get a free lunch. And then you also don't have the poison subtyping, which means the bug type Pokemon here are going to hurt you even more so than they would otherwise. One thing working in Meganium's favor, though, is that you do have the Earthquake, and the Earthquake can bring the doom to the Bug-type Pokemon and lays in a solid neutral hit to just about everything. So Meganium, definitely not too shabby, definitely a step below the Venusaur, but definitely worth considering if you have. And then the other alternative Pokemon we have is Victory Bell, and Victory Bell's existence is kind of just a stand-in for any Razor Leaf user in general. Big advantage that Victory Bell has over other Razor Leaf users is that it's got the really fast Leaf Blade going for it, so it still maintains that shield pressure. And then you also have Acid Spray, so if you defeated the Pokemon you're meant to defeat, you took out the frickin' SwagTips over here, the next thing comes in, it's Charizard, there's no way you're going to beat it. Well, then you just give it Acid Spray, and then whatever comes in after the Victory Bell will have a easier time, presumably, with Charizard. So that could be something working out for you. But any Razor Leaf user could definitely do a stand-in. Some people do consider using Ivysaur instead of Venusaur as sort of a stand-in there. And my personal opinion on it is, while Ivysaur is a good Pokemon, it is pretty dynamic. It's got Bind Whip. It's a decent analog to the Venusaur. I think if you don't have the Venusaur with the Frenzy Plant, you might want to look at Meganium or just a straight-up Razor Leaf user instead of trying to be Venusaur. Like, if you're not Venusaur, you're not going to be Venusaur, and that's my opinion on the matter. Then finally, in the center, we have the Mantine, and Mantine's a pretty tricky general pick for this cup. Definitely very good. So you have two fast moves to reasonably choose from. You got the Bubble, which helps you take out this group a little bit more consistently, and then you have the Wing Attack, which helps you take out these two groups a little bit more consistently. For the charge moves, you got the Air Cutter or the Aerial Ace. What is the charge move? I don't know. It's flying type. But you've got that as a solid neutral hit for everything, and it hits super effective on the grass type Pokemon. And then you can also pair that with the Ice Beam, which just absolutely lays into the grass type Pokemon. For another charge move, you do have Water Pulse at your disposal, and while it can help you secure these matchups a little bit better, I think that the Ice Beam and the Flying type charge move are probably going to be where it's at as far as charge move activation times go. As far as Mantine goes overall, and its fast moves and charge moves, you can mix and match as you please, run some simulations, do some test battles, and come to your own conclusions. The less your opponent knows or is able to expect from your Mantine, then probably the more of an advantage you're going to have in the battle. And I do know that it does have Bullet Seed for a fast move, and I think we can just count Bullet Seed out. It's not really going to help you dominate these matchups that much more. So it's like, yeah, I'd say go with Bubble or Wing Attack. Keep that consistency up. So who else to include on your team? Well, we do have these Mold Breakers if you want to go against the grain. Starting out, we got Kingdra. And Kingdra, in every single cup it's able to be in, it's just that solid general pick in the background. It's got Dragon Breath, so it's never bad, but its charge moves have a really high energy cost, so it's never really all that good. Personally, my feelings on Kingdra is if it got Surf or like Twister even, that would be enough to take Kingdra to another level than what it's always at. But I feel overall, if you bring in a Kingdra, you are going to be slightly behind your opponents. It won't be a bad pick, but I don't think it's the best pick ever. So if you truly are lacking like a good solid water type, or you're trying to fill in that 6th slot, you don't really know what to include, I think Kingdra wouldn't be the worst option on the planet, but I really can't tell you any matchups that it truly dominates in. It's just a awkward freaking water boy. So good luck with the Kingdra. Sorry for offending people. I know that there are individuals that have won cups with the Kingdra, so definitely not the worst option on the planet, but it's not one that I really recommend. Magcargo, I already filled you guys in about Magcargo. It's the fire type that doesn't really behave as a fire type and just gives a giant molten middle finger to the Charizards of the world. The only reason why I'd ever suggest using a Magcargo is if you don't have the Blast Burn Charizard. Next up, we have the Confusion users. And the Confusion users are pretty spicy picks. If you look at your opponent's team and you do not see a Fortress, there's little reason to not just whip in your Confusion using Pokemon and wreak havoc upon their team. Yeah, Venusaur, sub-poison type, gets hit hard by the Confusion, and aside from Fortress, nothing's resisting that attack, so definitely solid Pokemon all around. Which Confusion user to use though? Well, that's the question. Exeggutor here has a really powerful Confusion, but it's a legacy move, so you might not have access to it, you might not be able to find somebody to trade it, or you might have it, they might have it, but it's like 1506, right? Fate. So that's a reason to include or disinclude the Exeggutor. You got Execute, who actually, at max level, because you got to max it out, even though it's like, I think like 1200 CP, more bulky than Exeggutor. Yeah, just because of how CP and PvP works out. Tankier Exeggutor, still has the Confusion, still has the Seed Bomb, but the extra spice. It has ancient power. So if a Charizard thinks it's a big man, it's coming in, look at me, I'm Charizard, I spit flames, rah! Guess what, fool? Ancient power. If you don't shield that, guess who's one-shotted? Charizard is. And what would make that even more hilarious is if you got the stat boosts, right? So that's definitely something that's in the court of Execute. Out of the court for Execute, though, is the fact that you do have to max it out, and its Confusion hits will be weaker than other members of the Confusion team here, which can allow some of the water types get the one over on it, which is like, yo, you're a grass type Pokemon, man. Like, what's going on, Execute? Yeah, so Execute, a risky pick for sure, but definitely rewarding if it works out. Then you got the Slowbro. Slowbro has Ice Beam. What more do you need to know? And then you've got the Slowpoke. And I really haven't heard much chatter on the Slowpoke. Checking it out, the thing that makes it stand out is the fact that it has Psyshock, so you got that early activation time going on, which could play into your benefits. But overall, definitely don't stand the Slowpoke. If you are looking for a Confusion user, I'd recommend one of these three over the others. And then as far as using a Grass-type Confusion user goes, there is some debate. Do you want to use that as your Grass-type Pokemon, or do you want to include it alongside another Grass-type Pokemon? That is something that you will have to question inside your soul, what you want to do. So Grass-type's kind of tricky for that, because the Confusion users will be a little bit less consistent, actually a lot of bit less consistent in the Grass-type role, definitely opening up many opportunities for counter coverage attacks to come in and just delete them. Going down further, we got the alternative Water-type Pokemon, and this is kind of like just the Ignore crew. I know that there's a lot of people that feel that Mudshot Poliwrath or Mudshot Politoed could work out for them, and I just don't see them doing it. I think too many things here in this particular cup resist their extra coverage and stuff like that, so I think you're going to be hard-pressed to make these guys work out well. Lapras also runs into a lot of issues. Freaking Quillfish up here. Threatening, it's fast, but I don't feel like it's got enough chutzpah to really break through this particular cup. And then, I don't even know why Amistar is here, maybe because it's got rock-type coverage. But aside from that, like, yeah, you're extra wrecked by grass, and you're wrecked by water. But hey, Charizard, right? So I would sooner use Magcargo than using an Amistar. So I think this is just a good ignore group, in my opinion. And then finally, we got the alternative electric types, right? Well, alternative electric types, but where are the other electric types? Oh, we got Lanturn. Are you telling me that Lanturn does the same exact job as these guys, but it also has water type coverage and water type resistances? Yeah, that's right. So why would you want to use these guys? Well, Lanturn does have the water type weakness to grass type Pokemon, so that is something that could hold it back. Problem is, though, is none of these Pokemon are particularly good against grass types themselves, so if you can find a reason to work these guys in instead of Lanturn, comment below. Let me know what these matchups are that you'd prefer to use these guys, and open my eyes to the Raikou, and the Magneco here. One electric type that is absent from this list that seems to be doing well enough from what the tournament data suggests, and something I picked up on pretty early on and surprised that it didn't actually make this list, is the Electrode. Yeah, so Electrode, it's got either Spark or Thundershock, I don't remember off the top of my head, and then Discharge. So Discharge, really quick, right? But the extra spice, what people don't see coming, is the Hyper Beam. And the Hyper Beam really sets it apart from the other electric type Pokemon. So I think it's kind of like the hidden master of the electric types in a way. I could just be crazy, right? Yeah, like, look, we got Quagsire up here, right? And he's ground type. He doesn't care about electric type hits. He defeats this Lanturn thing and everything else that's an electric type. But one Hyper Beam, he can't tolerate that very well. You got the grass types. You got Venusaur. Venusaur is so good. Ooh, it's the king. All the electric types, they can't touch Venusaur. Guess who can? Hyper Beam. Hyper Beam takes it out. So I think if your opponent isn't aware of Electrode having Hyper Beam, or maybe they don't respect Electrode with the Hyper Beam, or maybe they know and respect Electrode, but guess what? They're out of shields. Oh, joke's on them. Well, then the Hyper Beam can bring the doom. However, in a lot of PvP matchups, the final victor does come down to that crafty, like, I just KO'd you, like, at the last minute, quick charge move going on, whittling down everybody's defenses and HP. So Electrode might not be able to fare too well in that environment. But you whip out the Hyper Beam, they don't shield it, Shazam. So I might be crazy. If you are on Team Electrode, comment below. Let me know that you're on Team Electrode, and I'll give you a like, I guess. I don't know what else to say. And that covers it. The Rainbow Cup Meta Simplified. So yeah, if you want some more information on the matchups here, then, you know, check the article out or check out PvPoke, run some simulations on your own. Links to all this in the description, of course. If you enjoyed this content, you want to see more like it, well, then make sure to subscribe to SwagTips, right? SwagTips. And if you want me to build the team for you, definitely the Quagsire. So that's a staple for sure pick. You got the Charizard, the privileged Blast Burn. Definitely a for sure pick right there. No Charizard, alt pick I can go for is the Magcargo. Definitely Fortress. So 1, 2, 3, Blammo. And then Venusaur. And if you're lacking the privilege for the Venusaur, then go for something else. And then including a electric type, whether it be Lanturn or the secret hidden spice Electrode, that's another one. So that's 5 Pokemon, and I think I can leave it up to you guys to determine what your 6th member is going to be.